Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of FSI's NFL Preview. It is ITK Nation 47, Week 12 on deck for this NFL slate. The big $100 Millie Maker this weekend. I have a couple of darts going, so did some extensive research on guys I feel best for that GPP. But yeah, a lot of COVID news, a ton of injuries, games being moved, games potentially on the radar being moved, and a lot of COVID news in Cleveland. Now Pittsburgh, as if that game needed any more COVID news. Just keep a lookout. It just got the report as I was about to record. The Denver quarterbacks were sent home because of close contact with Driscoll. So that's a potential game that could be moved to either a different time on Sunday and or on Monday or Tuesday. So the slate is evolving. Like I said, the COVID and injury news has been absolutely abysmal. Probably the worst of the year so far. A lot to catch up with, and so keep your eyes peeled. Anytime before a lock, this slate could be a disaster. But at the same time, those kind of disasters could breed a lot of opportunities and opportunities we could take advantage of. Some of them injuries with the backups being underpriced and or guys now going to be considered chalky, and we could maybe make some good GPP pivots to guys with better upside. So a lot of times you get a lot of guys in the NFL DFS industry. They get these chalk matchups and they think they're so good, and they pound them in GPPs and cash, and then when they don't pan out, the smaller owned guys tend to bring home the bigger bucks. So gonna try to find you some of those pivots along with maybe some guys that you just can't miss on. Gonna get started. At quarterback, we have Ryan Fitzpatrick, 5,500 versus the Jets. I just want to make a small note. You can pay up for Kyler Murray, Allen, Justin Herbert, and Mahomes. I don't think you need me to tell you to pay up for four of the best quarterbacks of the year so far. Those are obvious, gems of the slate, and that you're going to have to pay for them. I think with the salary on this slate and other positions, I think it's easily attainable to pay up for those four quarterbacks, and that's kind of where I'll be leaning mostly in my lineups. But I figured to give you guys a couple of value plays at quarterback if you did want to pay up for all the sure points at wide receiver and running back, and I think that's a viable strategy as well. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick because he's getting the Jets. Last time he started a game, he started versus the Jets, and they won 24-0. He put up 191 in that game for 3 TDs. Before he got benched for Tua, he had 1,600 yards and 10 TDs. And I like Malcolm Perry at 4K and Devontae Parker at 5,900 to be those stackable pieces to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Another game I like from the quarterback position is the Atlanta Falcons and Las Vegas Raiders game. Matt Ryan, 5,900. I like him more so if Julio Jones does play. I think with the Todd Gurley news, everybody's going to be just focused on playing Brian Hill. I get that. But I like Matt Ryan. If Julio plays, I think they kind of pass more. I think this game shoots out because I don't think Atlanta's going to be able to stop Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think that keeps Atlanta throwing the football, and I think that could lead to a decent fade for Brian Hill in GPP in cash games. So hopefully Julio plays, and I'll have some Matt Ryan and Julio, maybe a little bit of Ridley stacks. I kind of always do with Atlanta because they're always throwing the football. They always continue to push the pedal to the metal, and don't mind those price tags on those receivers as well. 65 and 71 for those wide receivers. Derek Carr is going up against a team that had given up back-to-back quarterback one performances to Drew Lock and Taysom Hill. Those are quarterbacks that he's better than, in my opinion, and he just put up 3 TDs versus Kansas City. So I do like Derek Carr in GPPs. Only issue is, if the Raiders do get up big, they're going to be pounding the rock with Jacobs and Booker. So I could see his opportunities dwindling. That's why I kind of lean Matt Ryan with Julio Jones. because I believe that they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more than the Raiders will. We've seen the Raiders continuously pound the rock versus the Browns. They had no problem just force feeding Jacobs against Kansas City. So they are pretty devoted to the run game, and that's kind of led to some missed opportunities for Derek Carr to pad some stats, and that's why his statistics are down. But if Atlanta gets up big, you're going to see Derek Carr throwing against a pretty weak secondary, and you're going to have guys like Aguilar and Waller kind of be the focal point of that passing offense. So with that being said, let's get into some running backs. My favorite play on the slate is Nick Chubb, 7,100. As a Browns fan, I've seen Nick Chubb over the course of the last 2 games since his return from the MCL injury put up 39 carries for 240 yards and a touchdown. Easily could have been a few more touchdowns, but as you know, he ran out at the one to salvage the victory versus the that was the shoot. Can't remember the game that was against. Anyway, but yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars have given up an average of 141 yards total and 11 TDs in the last 10 games. I also don't mind Kareem Hunt too. His backup 5,600 is really cheap. Nick Chubb's only 7,100. That's extremely cheap as well. So Kareem Hunt too. He seems to get there in a variety of ways. He seems to get a lot of red zone looks, and he seems to get a lot of the passing work. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are one of the worst teams against the pass in this entire league. So I could see Kareem Hunt getting there just as much as Nick Chubb getting there. Do I think that limits the upside of Chubb? In ways, but I don't think at 7,100 you're really worried about not scoring, anything less than 20 points. Well, you're not. You're trying to get to that 20-point floor, and I think anything after that is a bonus at his price tag, and you don't have to pay $9K like you are for Dalvin Cook to get him. So, and for that reason, I like him for cash because I like the savings plus the matchup, and he's going to get his volume. He's a guy that gets better as he goes. So, love Nick Chubb on the slate. A lot of value running backs to talk about. I think I'm going to leave that to Keats to handle for you guys in his video coming out shortly after mine. He wants to talk about a few of these guys. My only mention, as I already talked about, Brian Hill being the chalk at 4K. It doesn't mean much to pay off. I think that's more of a cash game play in a better GPP fade. James White would probably be my pivot at 4,500. No Rex Burkhead, as he came in after Rex Burkhead got injured, and he got 6 catches for 64 yards, and he even got the ball 5 times. So I feel comfortable with James White in a likely game where they're going to have to be throwing the ball a lot against Arizona. He would be my favorite play of the Patriots' backfield. It's always hard to pick in that backfield, but I think he's fairly safe in this game with no Rex Burkhead. Wide receiver, tight end. Moving along here. We have Pittman for Indianapolis versus Tennessee. He had 7 catches for 101 yards in the last game, 2 games ago. He's pretty good bet at 5K. I do like Christian Kirk. I think Stephon Gilmore is back for the Patriots, and you're going to get him shadowing DeAndre Hopkins. So Christian Kirk at 5,800. No Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to get a bigger target share in this game. And I think Andy Isabella at 3K can be sneaky with no Larry Fitzgerald as mentioned. So let's see how that pans out. I know the Patriots are really bad against the run, so this could be a game where you get a lot of Drake and Edmonds. But if, there's some chance that the Arizona Cardinals need to throw the ball a little bit more than they anticipated, I think Kirk and Isabella make for pretty good plays. Keelan Cole, Shenault, and Colin Johnson for the Jaguars. I expect the Jags to be throwing the ball all day, as the Browns I consider to be, heavy favorites in a game where the ball's going to be getting thrown a lot, and I think all 3 receivers under 4K. It's hard to pick which one is going to have the breakout game, but all 3 receivers under 4K, I don't mind picking maybe 1 or 2. It's hard to say which one. My favorite of the 3 would be Keelan Cole. I think he's a little bit more proven. Chenault's kind of like a gadget guy, and Colin Johnson's going to be lining up outside. No Denzel Ward for the Browns. Basically, a team down to three pass rushers. Myles Garrett's still in the COVID list. Taki, their better linebacker this year, is out with COVID as well. So it might be a game where Jacksonville surprisingly puts up a couple more points than anticipated. The only problem is they're playing Mike Glennon at quarterback, and that's probably not a spot where I'm going to be targeting in GPPs, but I might have some exposure to some of these cheap wide receivers for Jacksonville to maybe pay up for Dalvin Cook, and then at the same time go get Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I think that's a pretty viable strategy this week, is that stars and scrubs approach with some of the value that we have on the slate. As mentioned in that Atlanta Raiders game, Waller, Aguilar, Julio, Ridley. It's just a high total. Very good game for a shootout. Bengals and Giants seem to be one of those games where you're staying away from the offensive side of the football, but I don't mind Boyd. 5K is really cheap. But I could see myself getting to a point where I want to pay down from him or pay up. So he's kind of like in that odd range where I might not need him. Shepard and Slayton are two guys that are probably only going to exceed value if they score. So not knowing which one of those guys is the beneficiary of that, I might be staying away from this game entirely. In a 20 entry max sample size, or 20 entry max contest entry, I think we're going to have a lot of Diggs and Beasley with my Allen stacks, and then Allen and Henry on the Herbert side with the Chargers. This game looks to be the biggest total on the slate, probably going to be the highest pace, the most points scored. I think when we use these value guys that I have mentioned, we're going to be paying up for guys like Diggs and Keenan Allen, and one of those big stud running backs along with the quarterback in that football game. So love those four. No John Brown for Buffalo is kind of opening the door for Diggs and Beasley. The running back position for that team's kind of decimated by just lack of production. So going to be a lot of Josh Allen and Diggs, probably some pivots off Beasley or pivots off Diggs to Beasley, but you could very well play all three. Keenan Allen lines up to be one of the best plays on the slate. He seems to be Justin Herbert's go-to guy, and I don't think Austin Eckler being active is going to make him a must and then make Allen a fade. I don't think he gets enough volume in his first game back to exceed enough expectation to where it's taking that much away from Allen. It could. It remains to be seen. This Anthony Lynn guy is pretty untrustworthy, but I really like Keenan Allen as the top receiver on the slate. Henry's caught touchdowns, and I think the last two games seems to be really finding his form and really separating himself as a decent target for Justin Herbert, like Henry. There's a few other guys to mention. I'm going to let Keats go ahead and talk to you about some of those guys. Carolina, just randomly, in a really good passing situation. Minnesota probably going to be playing up front from the lead, and you're going to get Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, with Teddy Bridgewater back. I think that can lead to a lot of good fantasy points being scored. I don't mind mixing and matching a game stack with them, as well as the Minnesota side. And probably the secret sneaky stack of the slate will be this Kansas City and Tampa Bay game for late game hammers. You got Mahomes with Hill, Kelsey, Watkins is back, so that takes a little bit away from Robinson and Hardman. But yeah, love the Kansas City side. What's not there to like? We kind of seen Tampa Bay get shredded by Kupp and Woods last time we saw them play. So really love the Kansas City side. It's hard not to, especially when you get an opponent like we saw them play against the Raiders that can really put up points with them. So that kind of keeps the pace going. It keeps the offensive production rolling. And for that reason, I really love Mahomes, Hill, and Kelsey stacks. And then it's hard to trust Tom Brady to be honest. But if this is going to be a game where he's going to be playing catch up, maybe the receivers to the move with Godwin, Evans, and Antonio Brown. If I had to pinpoint my favorite, I think I would lean Godwin. He seems to be my favorite of the three. And defenses. Only got 4 that I'll probably play. I've been trying to really narrow down my defensive exposure because it's very random in a sense. A lot of teams score points, but you always try to get sacks and turnovers as part of like the floor for the best way to target them, I guess you would say, because your expectation is only 6 to 10 points for a decent score from defense. So I always try to find the cheapest that can get me to that point total. For tournaments, you're gonna have to get the team that scores touchdowns, and that's just kind of like a blind flip of the coin. So if my 4 picks would be Dolphins at 4,200, Saints at 3,800, the Giants at 3,200, and the Brownies at 3,100. Probably going to have a big circle on the Giants at 3,200. Cincinnati's not going to have Burrow. There's a possibility Gio Bernard doesn't play. We got that as like one of the lowest totals. 3,200 is probably going to be, and them and the Browns, 3,100 are probably going to be very popular. So those are probably the 2 defenses I roll with the most. But that'll do it. Please like and subscribe to the video. It helps me give you the content we love to do. And have a fun Saturday. See you Sunday.